Andor Season 1. Andor is a show that I wasn't all that hyped for. It's a show that I thought would fit the same sort of themes and narratives that all the other Star Wars movies and shows have done in the past. But instead, I was surprised because I got a Star Wars show that was actually different to all the other Star Wars products. And when I finished the show, I said to my dad, this actually doesn't make me want to watch any of the other Star Wars stuff I've seen in the past. And what I mean by that is this was a very grounded show, and it was thorough, and it was an intense look at a fight against corruption. It was a new look at the Empire, and it felt like we were looking at real people, but they just happened to be living in the Star Wars universe. It didn't feel much like science fiction. It didn't feel much like fantasy. It just felt like a very grounded story that happened to be set in a universe that we're all very familiar with. I thought this show was a massive breath of fresh air. Other Star Wars movies and TV shows have almost had like a bit of a inevitability to them. You can kind of predict how it's going to go, who's going to win, and obviously with this we know how it's ultimately going to go, but because of the characters we're dealing with, and we're dealing with a lot of new characters, there is that sense of you're not sure who's going to win, and the sense that obviously lots of sacrifices are going to be made before the goal can be achieved here. What this show did best was show how bad the Empire really is. In the past, it's always been Empire equals bad, as they blow up things with the Death Star, or Darth Vader chokes someone, or stormtroopers shoot at people. Here we see how they're running things. Here we see how the Empire is really choking out the galaxy so it can run things its own way. But what makes it better is we see a lot of Empire perspective throughout. We see the passion behind the ISB officers. We see the corruption at play. We see a network that's constantly affecting one another, from Empire to politicians to rebels to spies. The way the episodes were split up was very well balanced and very well effective. I thought we got the right amount of time with each and every aspect, with each and every person in this show. Now, I'll admit, the sections with Mon Mothma were my least favourite, the political side of things, but they are necessary. I understand the necessity for them. That is, once again, a pivotal point, and it would have been a talking point had they not looked at that, because you do wonder after the prequels what the whole deal is with how the Senate works and how the politics works once the Empire has just sort of taken over and are running things, and you get to see the corruption that's running through that. It's not like I looked away when a Mon Mothma scene came up. You kind of know what you're getting into. You're not going to see anything too thrilling here, but it's once again another move on the chessboard. But the highs of this show always came with Cassian, his time in prison, his antics on Aldhani, and also anything with Stellan Skarsgård, who always steals the scene in pretty much wherever he's in, but he steals it here as well. He delivers some great monologues, some great speeches, and it's great that an actor of his caliber is in a show like this, a Star Wars show. You never want, or at least I fear when an actor like this is put in a product like this. I do worry they're not going to make the most of it, because he is someone who is a great actor, and sometimes Star Wars can waste that because it's all about blasters and lightsabers. This is a very mature Star Wars show. It brought in the high caliber acting, as the dialogue was very important, and aspects in general such as prisons and slave camps. You even have an escort bar in the first episode. You're seeing the darker side, sort of the grittier side to Star Wars, the side that's never really been explored. It's always just been about ultimate good versus ultimate evil fighting each other, but this, you really see what's going on in between all that. The point is, this show did things different. It didn't follow the same formula. It wasn't relying on nostalgia or cameos. It was doing its own thing, and it was doing it very well. Of course, you do get cameos in a sense, such as Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma, but for the most part we're looking at a whole new group of characters, and we're exploring a lot of Andor, before the events of Rogue One, which is making it feel like its own standalone unique thing. Of course, this is a series that is leading up to Rogue One. It's meant to be the events in play that happened before, and we're getting another season, at least another season as far as I know. I'm not sure if they're going to try and run it further than that. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to do, it feels like, before they get to the events of Rogue One. But the show has me in this mindset now where I'd happily see the characters that we're following now be the ones that ultimately take down the Empire and win the fight, rather than it fall to a Jedi eventually, as it does with Luke Skywalker. It's just something about these characters, they feel so real and so interesting. It's like I'd love to see them sort of go all the way with this and be the ones to ultimately win the big fight. I have lots of praise for this show, but it's just the obvious stuff like sets, the soundtrack, the CGI, the costumes, the performances. It kind of goes without saying, but it was all very, very strong. I don't think this show is perfect, however. I think some episodes do drag a little bit. I think certain characters are just not as interesting to be with at times. As I said, I think the best time is always with Cassian. But there is no standout issue with Andor here for me. I just think it's a very high quality show, and I think it needed to lay a lot of groundwork in this first season, and then ultimately it can push on from that in a second season and really get into more of the gritty, intense stuff. And this is a show that I think that people that aren't like fans of Star Wars could actually enjoy. I think this would actually be a good gateway for them to get into Star Wars. I think if you wanted to start someone off at a point, you could really say, well, watch Andor, and then they can watch Rogue One, and then they can watch the original trilogy, you know, if they actually wanted to weave their way in, because I think it's a good way to start. And I think this show obviously took a risk being the way it is, because it's kind of switching it up from all previous Star Wars products in the past, but it's a risk that definitely paid off. It's a tricky one. I can't quite say it's the best Star Wars show made, because The Mandalorian really did a lot for me. I thought that was a really great show, but of course that is a show that is using stuff we are familiar with to amplify and maximize on the content it's giving us, such as we knew about Mandalorians, and then you have a Baby Yoda, and then you have Boba Fett returning, and then you have Luke Skywalker making an appearance. Like, it could definitely use nostalgia to boost itself, whereas this isn't doing that, so it's almost tricky to compare. But I've got to say, Andor is definitely the most unique of the Star Wars shows, and the most unique thing that Disney have done. But this show is, like I said, it's the breath of fresh air that the franchise needed, and I think it's really interesting that they went for this story, and I think it makes all the events that happen in Rogue One even more fascinating and exciting because of this show. Like, I can't wait for almost when they finish making this show to watch it all and then watch Rogue One. I think it will amplify Rogue One to new heights. I would give Andor Season 1 an 8.5 out of 10, and when it comes to the rewatchability rating, this definitely deserves rewatches. I would say rewatch occasionally. It's the sort of thing, I don't watch a whole lot of Star Wars these days. I don't rewatch it like I used to, but I would happily go through Andor again and then watch Rogue One. I can see myself doing that, you know, pretty often. If you've seen Andor, let me know what you think about it. Do you think it's the best Star Wars show? Because I would not blame you for saying so. I know some people find it a little bit slow, others think it's fantastic, but I think we can all agree it's a good show. Thank you for watching, as always. Yeah, let me know what you think about it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.